A very good evening and welcome to a brand new edition of Face to Face, coming to you direct from our Newsfirst studios here in Colombo. Today I have in the studio a very special guest whom I personally been wanting to engage in a conversation with, especially something that matters a lot to Sri Lanka is what he is knowledgeable in, and I'm talking about tourism. We say Sri Lanka is a destination that many should choose for their next holiday, but how good are our offerings? How well have we met the expectations of travelers and aspiring travelers? And how can Sri Lanka rebuild or build further on its tourism? To talk about this and much more, I have with me tonight Mr. Malik Fernando, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance and also the head of the hotel division of Dilmati's. A very good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Jamal. Lovely to be here.
So Malik, from the offset, I want to pose a certain challenge in the way of my question is, they say that tourism needs to be branded well. A good branding and a good marketing campaign is what a potential traveler would decide on when choosing which destination to go to next. And if I am to give you a certain tagline to pitch to potential travelers as to why Sri Lanka needs to be their obvious choice if they're traveling, just detail out to me and the viewers on what are the key pillars that you will use, how stakeholder contribution must happen, government support, state support, and realistic targets for tourism arrivals and revenue. My tagline would be Sri Lanka Tourism 2025 and beyond. What would you say?
Brilliant question. I mean, you're covering so many aspects. Yes. I mean, for me, what Sri Lanka offers, it offers something for everybody, which is very unusual because, I mean, we can talk endlessly about the attributes that we have, which are quite unique. So we have a continent's worth of attractions in a small island. It's an island of treasures. We're talking to a local audience, so they know what we offer, but whether it is the Central Highlands, the Hill Country, World Heritage Sites, or surfing, or amazing beaches, or wildlife. We literally have it all. So if you look at the other Indian Ocean islands, which are doing much, much better than us in tourism, they have much less than us to offer. They're very one-dimensional, but they're well positioned in the consumer's mind. And there is a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about Sri Lanka.
Yes.
And we have to clear the air. That's because of our history and, the ups and downs that we've had. But, you've got countries that have very average or mediocre tourism products, but great marketing.
Okay.
And they do well. Then you've got countries like Sri Lanka, which has amazing potential. It's a marketer's dream, but isn't marketed at all. When I say at all, I mean at all. There's zero consumer marketing. There's also probably a lack of understanding of what consumer marketing is because it's not about branding, it's not about marketing because, with digital media, it's moved beyond branding and above the line advertising, TV commercials, all that's very passé. Now it's about editorial, about, visibility on social media and, just getting the word out through the right kind of channel, so you attract an audience that is much wider than we have right now. You attract an audience that pays a fair price for our product because everyone here agrees broadly that the rates for Sri Lanka, although it's gone up this upcoming season, which is looking good, is way too low. I mean, you could pretty much stay in a 5-star hotel in Colombo not so long ago for the price of 2 cups of coffee on another Indian Ocean island. It's ridiculous. So you look at the return of investment for the owners, you look at the total lack of pipeline FDI in the future from foreign brands wanting to come in. It's because our tourism product still has amazing potential. We've had the most amazing potential for the longest time, as has the country generally in every sphere. But it's just not harnessed. Now, I'm hopeful, and this is probably a last opportunity, that we take concrete steps to harness it. There's enough talking about what a great destination it is. And as I said, I don't want to talk much further about how great it is and what the potential is. Now we
face the facts.
The whole narrative, Jamal, has to change to what has to be done to actualize that potential what has to be done next month, next quarter, next year. There are some very, very simple steps that I hope the government will take now that they are in the saddle. They've been in power now for probably less than 2 months, but still the time is right for them to set up the structures, because they have said, as has every previous administration, that tourism has the highest potential and will be focused. For a start, an excellent manifesto, which kind of pins down all our issues and where we should focus. Now it's got to get into execution, action mode, what you need to do. And that's an area where I've not seen anything yet, but I hope that that'll happen in the next few weeks and months. The tourism season is looking good, simply through an absence of instability, if you know what I mean.
Yes,
it's not nothing we've specifically done, but people who've always felt nervous about coming over the last few years have said, okay, now no bad news, we'll come back. So things are looking much better, but it's still a very low base. And my concern is that there will be complacency, because, you know, you could say, look, our numbers have gone to 1.8, 1.9, 2 million per annum, which is what our competition gets in 4 weeks, right? Or 6 weeks. Now, I'm not saying that we want to get to 20, 25 million, but we should be able to get to 3, 4 million. But what's more important than the number is the value, right?
Yes.
So across the complete, segments from homestays to 1-star, 2-star, 5-star boutique, rates need to go up 30, 40, 50%, and it benefits everybody. So there are a few concrete steps that we need to do to position the destination, and then secondly, to address many of the shortcomings that visitors face when they come here.
Right. So while you were giving that very comprehensive explanation, you mentioned the absence of instability, and I think you and I, as well as our viewers, know the instability that you alluded to, which was the travel advisories issued by some of the top tier high commissions in the country, which attracts a lot of tourists from those particular countries as well. But my question was, when that saga unfolded, and you being the chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance was very vociferous, and you made a big outcry about it impacting the resurfacing tourism industry. But my question was, how bad of a connection did the state's authorities have with those foreign missions for the state authorities not knowing that such a travel advisory would be issued?
You see, Ramal, I actually wasn't referring to the advisories, because I think advisories were just a little blip. When I say instability, I'm talking of
beyond.
I'm talking of the
political
long conflict that ended in 2009.
Okay.
Did we ever have any campaign saying that Sri Lanka has re-emerged? I keep talking about Rwanda.
Right.
You know what happened in Rwanda with the genocide, and you look at how they've repositioned. We never repositioned. We never had a coming out party after 2009.
I see.
Which benefits everybody. So if you look at the areas which were impacted, the north and the northeast, there is no tourism in the north and the northeast. There's something wrong, right? There hasn't been that peace dividend to the inhabitants of that area.
Understood.
For one. Secondly, the economic crisis that we had in 22, which in a way was a bit more worrying, because, even the attacks that we had previously, countries get attacked at random and then things come back. But the economic crisis had a longer lasting effect.
Okay.
The advices for me were a little blip, and I kind of stood up, as did many others in the industry, because I realized that, see, the other thing with advisories is this, diplomats cover their asses by giving advisories against any country in case they get sued. This all started with Lockerbie in the 1980s, where the US government was sued because they had some information about the bombing of the aircraft, and there wasn't a system of advisories until that time. So from the 80s, countries rushed to issue advisories, if someone sneezed. And in Sri Lanka, it's got particularly impacted because we didn't have a counter. Now, if you look at Germany, Australia's travel advisory to Germany says the threat of terror attacks can happen anytime.
Right.
But no one going to Germany reads the travel advisory. People coming to Sri Lanka read or when they search, because there is an absence of counter positive information in terms of a marketing campaign. Now, if you go to another Indian Ocean island and you search for the island, you will get media articles from the Financial Times UK or Tatler or Vogue or the Daily Telegraph or blog posts. You might have an advisory in there as well. But here in Sri Lanka, because we don't have a strategic campaign, advisories take a predominant role because they come from a very credible source.
I see.
Now, the government of Sri Lanka also is a credible source. Tourism Board is a credible source. But because of inactivity in the consumer space, you find that advisories become kind of like the go-to when people search. So in my view, advisories, there's no point talking about advisories. They will always happen, right? Every country in the world has a terror threat according to the advisories by some countries, right? As I said, Germany.
Yes, exactly.
But in Sri Lanka's case, we'll conveniently talk about advisories when really the elephant in the room is that we are not communicating ourselves, and yet we're moaning about someone else communicating about us.
Yes, true.
We have to shape the narrative.
I see. So when you talk about the counter, the positive influence or the assurance that you provide, if there is some sort of an instability or if there is a rumor going around that there is somewhat of a threat in a particular country and a potential traveler is planning a visit to that country, they would naturally go on the internet or Google and search for Sri Lanka tourism or any other country's tourism. But how well equipped are Sri Lanka Tourism's website or news aggregators or news providers to ensure that there is always an updated information sheet for a potential
Yeah, see, Jamal, it's not
tourist.
just that. To be honest, our tourism product is defenseless
I see.
in terms of marketing. We haven't started marketing. Right? There is a concept that marketing is going to a travel show overseas and meeting a travel agent.
Right.
When I talk of marketing and when brands talk of marketing, whether it is Unilever or Procter & Gamble or XYZ tourism country,
Yes.
they're talking of consumers, people like you and I. Right? So there's no point marketing to intermediaries. So we haven't yet started reprofiling and repositioning tourism, which this government says they want to do. They have to do it if our industry is to grow.
Right.
So first thing is, marketing a destination is not just going to an agency and giving them a brief. It's public relations, it's giving them a regular feed of information, it's engagement.
Yes.
So it requires a particular skill set which no government agency has.
So is that where destination branding also comes in?
But destination branding is something which no government agency here is able to do, including the tourist board. It has to be a separate setup called nation branding. What I have been talking and a few others is we have to position this destination. Sri Lanka, there's a concept called nation branding.
Right.
If you think of Switzerland,
Okay.
you have a perception
you think
created by Federer, chocolates,
Right.
the railways, all of that. When you think of Germany, it has a certain nation brand. You think of Somalia, it has another nation brand. Now, if you look at Sri Lanka, there is no clear
Perspective.
identity positioning. But if you look at our tea, our cinnamon,
Yes.
our tourism product, highest density of waterfalls in the world, with its surfing,
Yes.
our ruined cities. If you package all our goods and services, cinnamon, Ceylon tea, our apparel industry, we supply amazing brands like Victoria's Secret. There's some great companies here that have direct consumer contact. Right?
Yes.
So if you look at those products and you look at tourism, what I'm saying is have a single strategy called nation branding. You get much better value for money. The money is already available,
I see.
right, through the 1% tax that the tourism industry pays. And it's not very expensive to brand
Yes.
in the consumer space. Then what happens is nation branding helps tourism. It helps trade. It helps FDI, investors.
Yes.
It helps foreign affairs. It helps human rights. It just raises the country
The profile of the country.
Exactly, right? Like Singapore did over so many years. Of course, that was through economic achievement, but through a series of measures, nation branding, where it's done by a separate, skilled unit, you position everything we offer, all our goods, all our services. Don't just talk of tourism.
So by way of developing a separate unit for nation branding, are you proposing that it may be in the form of a committee or a commission with seasoned veterans and industry experts working on it?
There are enough people in Sri Lanka who will happily come together pro bono to be able to create a task force. Committee has got a bit of a bad name,
yes.
but a task force that comes together and within 3 or 4 months gets things done, working with specialists and professionals overseas. Because any campaign needs to be managed.
So would you be willing to take up a task of that?
I most certainly would, and I've offered, as have many others, to do it pro bono as a public service. Because the thing is, there is a concept that you call a tender, then you award. You can't just award something and walk away. You have to engage, you have to drive, you have to create content. No state agency is able to create content day in, day out, 24/7 to be able to feed the people that you commission to do your positioning. It's a full-time skilled role. So I'm saying it's not just tourism. Across the board, it'll help trade, it'll help EDB, it'll help BOI, it'll help, again, foreign affairs.
Yes.
Because the moment you enter trade negotiations with a country that has a higher positioning, higher profile, you're speaking from a position of
elevating
strength.
your station.
Yeah,
yes.
so I'm saying it's nation branding we need to do. The other aspect is on tourism. Again, we need to position the destination. We need to start marketing. We've not started. Now, people here in Sri Lanka tend to be very complacent when there's a bit of a pickup. What we're seeing is an organic pickup, as I said, due to the absence of instability.
Right.
Our tourism numbers, people say, now, in your view, from what you've read, what are our tourism revenues?
I think revenues, I wasn't sure, but arrivals, I read, I believe we passed about 1 million.
Yeah, so it's a high, it's almost 2 now, 1.7, 1.8.
I see.
And then revenues are 4 billion, 3 billion, 5 billion.
Right.
But actually they're not. They're not even half that. Because you read in the media and you read in the central bank statistics, and this is disturbing, and the government needs to know this. The data on tourism revenues is absolute bunkum.
I see.
It's just a guesstimate. It is not central bank data. They take every traveler and assume the traveler spends $163 a night.
I see.
So a couple coming from Israel and Russia, staying in a small rented place in Sirasa, is supposedly spending $326 per couple per night, Jayamal. $326, when actually they probably spend $32. And worse, a lot of the travelers we have are probably, generating revenues from here offshore, as we know, because of unlicensed businesses and
the shadow economy.
Controls. Yeah. So for me, we must stop reporting about revenues because that misleads people. The government says we want $8.5 billion in tourism revenues
by 2030.
Yeah. They assume that we have 4 to 5 now. We don't. We've had the same ratio since 2017, 2018. The mix of traveler has changed. Now, with the kind of traveler that we had in 22, 23, 24, do you think they're spending the same amount as the traveler we had in 17, 18? Do you think that the average traveler, say in Arugambe or Sirasa, is spending 326? That was basically just a guesstimate based on a survey. So for me, I get scared when someone says tourism is doing well, revenues are X billion. Nonsense. It is not central bank data, although it's published by the central bank because it's based on statistics they receive. Now, no one knows. Now, there is a concept called tourism accounting, which many other countries adopt, which has been offered in the past to this country. We've not taken it. We should grasp it with both hands. And tourism accounting is a more structured way of looking at accommodation, a sample, plugging into their systems, gathering data, particularly as we go in for a more IT-centric government strategy. We have to have more accurate data, because if you think that we are getting whatever that number, which is a guesstimate, then your starting point is wrong, because I'm saying it's not even half of that. But nobody knows.
Is that what you believe the government should look into first when it comes to tourism?
Absolute priority. They have to first know what is our starting point. What are we earning, or what roughly are we earning? Or at least, even if they don't do that, they have to accept, no, we're not earning that.
I see.
They don't want to be lulled into complacency, saying we're getting 4 to 5 billion. We want to reach 8.5. So they think, okay, we want to double it. But actually, no.
8.5 million tourists.
8.5 is probably quintupling it. Because there's no way we're getting $326. So simply put, You take the arrival date, you take the departure date, number of days, multiplied by 326 per couple. So to be honest, I can tell you before it comes in the media, before it comes in central bank data, I can tell you what the central bank data is going to publish next month. Take the number of arrivals and just do that maths. So so the point is this: you have to know where you are before you know how you want to go forward. The other concern I have is the state needs to get a grasp on significant issues we have with visitor management. So if you look at Yala, totally overcrowded, total turn off for travelers. Any traveler who goes into Yala vows never to go there and leaves with a blemish on Sri Lanka.
And similarly, also the wildlife.
Wildlife, cultural triangle and so on. Because, Yala, you get certain types of travelers who think of it as a drive-through zoo. Then you have Western European, US travelers who go in to observe. And for them, the way the animals are molested, cornered, or their own experience, is shocking, and that is such a black mark on Sri Lanka.
And those tend to be the high-end tourists.
Exactly. And honestly, if people aren't specific in saying, I want to go to Yala, we should stop sending them there like we'll send them to Sigiriya or to Nuwara. Secondly, the government needs to really resolve the operational issues in terms of visitor management. Now, they should form a new body handling a single visitor management unit that handles Yala, Sigiriya, all of them, using appropriate technology. Because if you look at Yala, the solutions are very simple. You have one entry gate. If you go in from one gate, you have to come out from the same gate. So you're not thinning out the crowd. So everyone hangs around the gate. Now, when we ask them why you can't go in from one gate, go through the park and go out from another gate, they say you can't. Now you think that's the law. It's simply because the little monitor's exercise book they use to write your number when you leave, they can't send it to the other exit. So now we have the concept of computers. Now, some of us got together and we donated computers and a software program for them to be able to track entry and exit across multiple gates. This was 6 months ago, right? They've not even plugged the computers in. So we have serious issues with the bodies that are meant to manage visitor flows. Political interference is one, but even if that is put aside, the absolute lack of drive, focus, in some cases resources of the units that run our visitor management, whether it is Sigiriya, whether it is Yala, is honestly, it's better to shut. Now I have a hotel in Yala, it's not going to help me, but it's better to shut those places rather than inflict that on travelers, because particularly as numbers increase, now we think, and travelers say, this is a raw, authentic destination. It's like Bali 30 years ago. The moment numbers increase, that rawness, that authenticity goes away. It's like flipping a switch. There can be a point where it actually turns people off. So what we have of the limited number of travelers who come, they have a fairly pristine experience. They don't have huge crowds except at the places I mentioned. So they think, okay, this is lovely. Now, when the numbers increased and there is limited capacity and the experience goes sour, that's where you will start seeing a backlash. So we can lose our future potential in no time at all, within one season, if we don't fix these issues, which are very simply fixable. All they have to do is find the reports that have been done annually by specialists, whether it is for Yala, whether it is for Sigiriya, is locked in some cupboard somewhere or in a committee report. Just action it. Very simple. And everything that we talked about, the cost is zero. It's just intelligence, it's motivation.
And the will to do it.
And the will to do it, right? And people should be forced to do what is right for tourism and what is in the country's interest.
So in that same vein, the will to do it, has the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance as an organization interested in tourism and other private sector organizations reached out to the government? Have they invited you to come to the table and discuss potential ways of building this capacity, upgrading Sri Lanka's nation branding profile. Has there been any intent so far?
Not yet. I hope there will be. It's not just the Tourism Alliance. There are several others, associations and right-thinking people who want to help.
Right.
But tourism is almost entirely private sector invested.
Yes.
And we provide substantial employment, the biggest employer in the country. There are many small and medium enterprises in tourism, but there is a lack of say in terms of strategic operational regulatory involvement.
Yes.
So I looking at the manifesto, if the government is serious about implementing the manifesto or half of it, they've got to quickly get down to brass tacks and appoint specific task forces. The sad thing is, Jamal, the solutions are very simple. There's no money needed, because if it's for marketing and promotion, the money is already accumulated but not being spent.
Yes.
The other implementing elements, regulatory and visitor management, it's not a matter of money. It's a couple of computers here and there, new systems, processes. We've not really developed our product. Even if you look at Sigiriya, everyone goes to Sigiriya, they climb up the frescoes, all the carbon dioxide is impacting the frescoes. But if you look at Sigiriya, it's a 10-acre site. There are so many things that you can do without actually climbing the rock.
And they're still unearthing certain things.
Yeah, it's like Ayers Rock in Australia. They've stopped people climbing it. But you can make an amazing Sigiriya experience without climbing the rock. But everything, so if you look at product development, it's been frozen circa 1960 or 1970. So that's where I really hope the government understands that you can't be complacent. They mean well, but in order to achieve the socio-economic benefits that they were voted into power for, they have to get cracking in terms of creating task forces, setting deadlines, do this in 30 days, do this in 90 days.
Yes.
Again, the solution is not rocket science. You're not sending a man to the moon or a woman to the moon. You're basically implementing what people have been talking about for the last 5 years, but it's fallen on deaf ears.
I see. We're having a very insightful conversation with Malik Fernando, chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance and also the head of the hotel division of Tilma Teas. We will be crossing over for a short commercial break, but stay tuned. We will be right back.
Newsfirst, face to face with Jamal Ratnayaka.
The Lanka T10 Super League is
Step away from the conventional art of storytelling. Get ready for the Newsfirst Breakfast Rundown with me, Zulfikar
Khan. මොකටද Today is the 17th of December 2024. Now, Speaker was appointed in Parliament following the resignation of Ashoka Ranvula, and there has also been certain statements made on the security of former presidents. Now, to give us a brief on this, I have with me today Nilakna Gunasekaran. Nilakna, what do we have today in the political arena in Sri Lanka?
Yes, Stuart, Minister of Public Security Anand Vijayapala informed Parliament today that all members of the tri-forces who have been assigned to the security details of former presidents will be removed from next week. And the minister said that the police officers will be assigned to provide security to former presidents based on timely threat assessments. And a special statement regarding this was made by the Minister of Public Security Anand Vijayapala in Parliament today. We will be bringing you this story and many other local stories and international stories on our prime time bulletin tonight.
Well, that was a brief on one of the stories that will be coming up on tonight's bulletin. Now, at the same time, we also have developments in the international arena. And to give us a brief on this today, we have Rochelle Tumodera. Rochelle, what is happening in the international arena?
Yes, so just like Nilakna said, various political things have been happening in Sri Lanka, various developments, just like that in the international arena as well. So many things have been happening politically in terms of weather and all that. So the headline story today on our international news is that the Canada's finance minister has resigned owing to disagreements with their prime minister. Now, this is also based on Trump's allegations as well. Now, she has cited various reasons for this, and the most important thing is that she has done this at the verge of her giving a report for the parliament as well. Apart from this political arena, in the weather also, a 7.4 earthquake has hit the Port Villa in Vanuatu as well. Now, this is with regards to the weather situation because there have been heavy weather conditions across the country as well. So that's an update on the international arena. So for more of the details, you can tune into our Primetime News Bulletin tonight.
Well, thank you very much, Rochelle. There's definitely developments in the political arena, in the local and also in the international arena. Well, we will be bringing you comprehensive reports on these stories and more as well tonight on our Prime Time News Bulletin at 9 on TV1.
TV1. TV for life. Newsfirst, face to face with Jamal Ratnayaka.
Welcome back to Face to Face. My guest on the show tonight is Mr. Malik Fernando, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance and also the head of the hotel division of Dilmah Teas. Malik, we were talking about all things tourism in Sri Lanka and also the minor changes that the authorities can do to really uplift the tourist experience and how Sri Lanka tourism is perceived in the global arena. And on that same topic, I want to speak to you about capacity building in terms of infrastructure. There was a bit of a talk back in the day about, I think about a year ago, about the floor and ceiling rates for rooms, especially in Colombo and its suburbs. And there was a bit of a tug of war going between the authorities and other stakeholders at the time. So I want to gauge what your prognosis is of that.
See, Jamal, that was in Colombo, where you've had 4,000 or 5,000 rooms that have opened up over the last few years. There's a couple of thousand yet to open, which are either delayed or delaying on purpose, right, because there's a total oversupply. So it's a bit sad where you have a debate about should you charge $60 or can you charge $100 or $120. In my view, it's all about the lack of demand for the destination at the right price. Now, when you've got people who are looking at coming for, say, meetings and incentives, and you'll pay price X. Now, you've got other destinations like, say, if you want a 3-star, 4-star product, yes, you go to Thailand.
Yes.
You see, in Bangkok, to build a hotel, we're going slightly off topic here, but to build a hotel in Sri Lanka costs several multiples from other Southeast Asian countries. Why? We have restrictions on, we have negative lists. Certain things, protectionist measures, which means that your cost of inputs is much higher. Your cost of energy is much higher. Labor productivity is lower. So the break even for properties in Sri Lanka is generally higher. So if you want, in Thailand, you might have a $50, $60, $70 property, which cost half as much to build, and the owners get their ROI through year-round occupancy. In Colombo or in Sri Lanka, it's a lot more expensive because doing business in this country is more expensive for a variety of reasons. And that's one reason why this government was elected, in order to unlock and to streamline and to,
to untangle
untangle all of that, right, which is holding back our development. Now, if you look at that particular argument, that's because we didn't have enough travelers coming in who were paying a slightly higher price.
Right.
And the comfort level in Sri Lanka, largely because you're scrambling for a limited pool of travelers, is you don't have the confidence to sell on price. You want to somehow get the deal and you'll sell at XYZ price.
Right.
So it was that particular conflict. But again, if you look at Colombo, there needs to be more activity here, more attractions with the development of the highway system. There's less need to transit in Colombo.
Yes.
So Colombo has a bit of a unique situation relating to the attractions to encourage a length of stay.
Yes.
Also, in terms of business travelers, because our economy has been non-investor friendly, and the economy has not been an investable economy, in my view. Internationally, you're not having enough business travelers. So you have people coming on junkets. If you're a business traveler and the company is paying $300, $400, $500, you wouldn't blink, because that's what you'd expect to pay if you're going to a 5-star hotel in an Asian country. Because you don't have that kind of traveler, you're having a 500 person.
You're unable to splurge.
Junket. And you'll have travelers who are more value based. So Colombo has a more intractable problem than the resort areas, which are more attractive for travelers. But even in the resorts, rates are too low, and we get comfortable with occupancies. When you ask many of my hoteliering friends, they say, oh, we're at 90%. 90% at what rate? Yeah, that's the problem with the rate. So the issue is, in many properties, to break even, you need to be at 130%.
I see. So there has also been a call for Sri Lanka to be developed to accommodate MICE events, right? Meetings, conferences, forums, and so on. And that call, again, I believe has been in the mix for quite some time, but hasn't really been actioned upon. So where do you stand on making Sri Lanka such a destination? Is it possible? What are the measures that need to be taken?
It absolutely is possible, and it's hand in glove with general tourism. Because MICE, in a way, is tourism. So if you look at India, India has the fastest growing outbound travel market. And it will be one of the biggest in the world in a couple of years. We're on their doorstep. And they love coming here, and so we can just look at India. We can look at the Middle East. So whether it's MICE meetings, incentives, and so on, they'll come to Colombo or Galle for an event, and then they'll go off on holiday somewhere else in the country. So it's all part of the same thing of positioning the destination and making it desirable. People will then pay more. Why do you pay more for brand X versus brand Y? Doesn't mean that the product is more expensive to make. It's just a perception. So I would absolutely support the need to grow our MICE business.
Profile, yes. Okay.
But that's connected with our overall tourism product.
Right. So I feel like the general tone of our conversation today was about making Sri Lanka's value proposition better, and making that perception of Sri Lanka to an overseas traveler more attractive. And well, marketing is the obvious way to do that. And you were speaking about Rwanda as well, and then it jogged my memory where there's this particular Premier League football team in the UK, Arsenal. Yeah. They have the Visit Rwanda tag on their jersey, and millions are tuning in to watch those matches every weekend. Why can't Sri Lanka adopt a similar strategy? And what sort of strategies must they adopt to just get in the message here and there for the viewers to see?
See, there are two things you need to do. First of all is you need to have a strategic marketing plan. Rwanda paid £30 million for Arsenal. We don't have that kind of money because that didn't come from the tourism budget, because that was a means of repositioning the country post the issues they had. So it was a bigger nation branding thing. You don't have to sponsor football clubs. You can basically do a lot of public relations, get into all the right magazines and newspapers, and a lot of digital activity that you can do. And Sri Lanka anyhow has a very positive perception amongst travelers in our core markets, which countries like Rwanda didn't have earlier. So we can leverage on that, but we need to get the message out that Sri Lanka is totally back to normal. Many don't know that, and many, they have a positive impact, but they don't know enough about it. It's a little bit, foggy. So number one is marketing, but number two, equally important, is product protection, as I said, because you market, more travelers come, they won't be happy. They're going to go back thinking, my God, the cultural sites, climbing Sigiri was a nightmare. Going to Polonnaruwa there was litter, there wasn't enough interpretation.
Public transport system was bad.
Yeah, going to Yala was a nightmare, which it is right now. Yala is a nightmare. Any traveler going to Yala, tourists, I cringe, because it is a huge black mark on Sri Lanka. So again, the Yala problems can be fixed in
days.
It can be fixed in days. It can be fixed in a week.
Yes.
But I hope someone who's listening decides, look, we can't just say that we are committed to tourism, the numbers will increase, and wave a magic wand. Because actually it can go in reverse. Because as we increase our numbers,
satisfaction might draw down.
No, yeah, exactly. You might have that backlash. And here, unlike before, they just get on social media, they get on their Instagram and say, look, this is horrendous. This is how they treat animals. This is how they treat tourists. And we should stop saying things like highest density of leopard in the world. Because we also have, as I said earlier, the highest density of jeeps watching those leopards in the world. So let's not talk too much about our biodiversity until we actually start enhancing, protecting it, and creating conditions where travelers can actually enjoy that biodiversity and pay a premium price for that to help conserve it. So it's really a two-pronged thing. One thing is you've got to market, but you've also got to sustain the product. And the third thing, if there's three things the government needs to do, the third thing is to set up a structure to get realistic, practical advice and to implement it with a very tough timeline. We are in a very positive mindset now with this upcoming season looking good. Many hotels are very, very full. The booking window is very strong for the next 3 to 4 months. So let's do what we need to do to keep that trend going in a realistic, positive manner. And let's not be conned by fake revenue numbers, which could sort of lull the authorities into thinking that everything is great.
It's great. Understood. We are running out of time, unfortunately, but I must pose this question to you because I feel like it'll add more value to the viewers' experience today. What I'm talking about is the cultural and social ties of the country. What our fundamentals are. Are we conservative? Are we progressive? And especially if you want to promote Sri Lanka and market Sri Lanka to tourists, you need to have the necessary entertainment capabilities, so to speak. That means you'll have to have better bars, nightclubs, have at least 1 or 2 bars that are open 24/7 for the tourists' convenience. And sometimes when such moves are taking place, the social and cultural aspect, the religious aspect comes in, where the majority of the people believe engaging in alcohol is bad, and then they wouldn't want bars to be open like that. They wouldn't want entertainment to happen to a certain extent. They believe gambling is bad, although it's one of the biggest money makers in the world. So how can the government manage those expectations as well, and also convince the citizens that Sri Lanka's identity, cultural identity and religious identity will be preserved while giving a better experience to the traveler, tourist?
See, I have to disagree with you. Pardon me for saying that, but that's not what travelers are coming here for.
Right.
In my view, our cultural disposition, our hospitality, our genuine warmth and our friendliness is what they want. And as they go in rural areas and they see people getting on with their lives, being, inviting you in for a cup of tea, redirecting you if you're lost on the Pico Trail. That's what travelers want. I mean, bars and restaurants will develop, but to be honest, they can go to Bangkok, they can go to Singapore, they can go wherever.
So they don't expect Sri Lanka to be that way?
No, because they come from countries where they've got that vibrant nightlife, and they don't necessarily, when they come here, they want slow travel, they want to switch off. It'll be nice in a hotel if there's a nice bar, but that's not a deal breaker. The reasons people come to Sri Lanka is not for that. I really don't think we need to prioritize that, because even if we do, we'll also be an after-ran. You'll have a third level Indian city which is a better nightlife than us. So we don't need that. And it's harder to build. Let it build organically. But
Okay.
primarily, let people come for our genuine warmth, our friendliness, our rural areas. The fact that you are welcomed like a local. Down in on the south coast or
Yes.
the east coast. I think that's really our USP, which we need to capitalize on. I don't think we need to try and mimic the origins where these people come from, and other destinations. People go to Bangkok, they don't go to Bangkok for biodiversity, or they don't go there for slow travel. They go there because they want a hectic New York style experience.
Yes.
Fine, but our position should be different. But we have to preserve that. And I'm worried that we're not doing enough to preserve that. I'm talking about our biodiversity and the experience of guests as they move around the country.
So you believe even charging a premium for a premium product where the guest feels at ease from the time they land at the airport till the time they depart is a better value proposition than working on sheer numbers?
Absolutely. I think you can charge more for not having bars and not having nightlife because that's something unusual. Again, our roads are not an issue because some people say it's so quaint to go on a country road, which we've not been on for years.
Yes.
We've got a great highway network, which is not, it is not adequately utilized. Tourism can help with that. But I really feel that we've been value for the longest time, right?
Okay.
Enough of value. We have to get positioned where you get value growth across the whole spectrum.
I see.
Because if you look at tourism booming across the world, people want to spend money. They're spending more money on experiences rather than cars and clothes and so on. So value is really a problem. You still offer value at twice the price. I'm saying you improve your product quality, you improve the visitor experience, you charge twice as much, but you will still offer the same or more value. Value is a perception of what you get for what you pay.
Understood.
Value should not be considered cheap.
Understood. Unfortunately, I have more questions to pose to you, and I'm sure our viewers would also love your insights, but that's all the time we have for Face to Face this evening. My guest tonight was Mr. Malik Fernando, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Tourism Alliance and also the head of the hotel division of Dilmatis. Thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule, joining me on the show and enlightening all our viewers tonight. We hope to have you on the show again soon.
Thank you very much.
And that's the way it was on Face to Face this evening. Thank you very much. Have a great night ahead and take care.